Welcome back to Women's Wealth, The Middle Way, the show that answers your questions about work, money, and family. My name is Susan McGlory Michael, and I am the CEO and founder of Glen Eagle, a wealth management firm in New Jersey.
My name's Carol Ann Fernandez. I'm the COO of Glen Eagle, and I'm very excited today to have two guests, Judy Schoenberg and Linda Lautenberg, the brilliant minds behind Evolve Me, joining us. So they've turned their personal journey into a mission guiding women through mid-career transitions with grace and resilience. Welcome, Judy and Linda. Thanks for having us.
Thanks so much for having us, Carol Ann.
Thanks, Judy and Linda. Why don't you each kind of give us a bit about yourself and the essence of Evolve Me and how it came about?
Great. I'm Judy, and I can kick it off and then hand it over to my co-founder, Linda. I'm co-founder of Evolve Me, and we are a career growth company for women midlife. We also support women who are currently employed and want to level up or advance in their roles, and we partner with companies interested in investing in women's talent development. I'm a former nonprofit executive. I was in the nonprofit sector for my whole career until my mid-40s when I saw 50 out on the horizon, and I said to myself that I want a next chapter. I don't know what that's going to look like, but I was ready after spending 15 years in one organization where I had a great career. I was ready for something different, something more aligned to who I became at that point in midlife. So I took a leap and I left. It was a really big identity shift for me, but I knew that I had to do that for my own growth as a professional, and I knew that I would have regrets if I stayed in a role I was doing well in, but it was kind of like status quo. So I took a leap, I left, and then I kind of was a freelancer for a few years, and I knew I loved working with people and building something, and I couldn't really quite Google my way into a next chapter out of my transition. There's lots of resources online, as you probably know, but I feel like I needed a community of women. I knew there were other women like me out there in their 40s, their 50s, who wanted to make a change. I stumbled upon a program for women returning to the workforce and social impact, and that gave me the momentum I needed to start my next path. And long story short, I met Linda there. She was in a similar situation, but not a career pivoter. She was a career returner, and we complement each other in those ways and many other ways. And we got together and we started Evolve Me. I'll let her take off the rest of our story and her personal story from there.
Thanks, Judy, and thanks again, Carolyn, for having us on. So my story, and actually so much of the reason why Judy and I love to work together, is so much of our backgrounds and our skill sets are very complementary. My story is very different. That my background was in banking, project finance, investment banking, real estate finance. And when we moved out of Manhattan into New Jersey for my husband to join a medical practice, I thought that I would be able to keep working, and I found that with one small child, that was really hard to do. This was back in the day when we barely had internet, right? So there was certainly no working remotely. I thought I would take a couple years off, and then 2 more children later, living in a community where there was, the norm was a single income. I got involved in a lot of really amazing volunteer work, and I honestly was really enjoying caring for my family. My husband's work did not have any flexibility to it, so one of us had to be flexible. And I just always thought something was going to fall in my lap because I had always been that really driven career person. And so I thought something will just come up. And suddenly that first out of 3 babies was getting ready to go to college. And I realized that had not happened. I had forgotten about myself, and I was working myself out of this current caregiving role, and I was 50, and I was really frightened that I didn't know what I was going to do next. I really was worried that I had left it too long. It was too late for me. And unlike Judy, I wasn't convinced that there were other women that felt like that. I did feel that if I could figure out what I would like to do next, that I was a pretty determined person and I could figure out how to get there. But again, I was turning to Google, and you cannot Google what should I do with the rest of my life. It just doesn't happen. And so I started reconnecting with some alumni and things, but the long and the short of it is I came across a program for women returning to the workforce. in the social impact sector. And that's where I met Judy. She and I were asked to come in, and we were contracted to take over their program, to reprogram it, to run it. We ran a big women's summit. We got a runway of working together for a year in this space and found it so rewarding. We found that there was so much out there to explore. We also realized by the women we worked with, and these were all women that were looking to return to the workforce, it came to us that there really weren't any resources specifically for women in midlife. And women in midlife have a lot of different things going on than maybe women coming right out of maternity leave. A lot of them are now starting to care for their parents. Their children are transitioning from being small to going into college. There are health problems, there are divorce, so many things. And we felt like there was a real need that was not being met for women that were either looking to change careers or return to the workforce. And that's how Evolve Me was born.
That's awesome. And I know so many listeners can relate to that. Not your story, but I do have 3 young children, so definitely understand the issue of trying to care for them and figuring out your career, or if you're going to be stay at home or continue on the journey. So I know there's a lot of people that are probably nodding their head as they listen. Judy, could you just tell us about the inspiration behind Evolve Me and how it shaped your mission?
Sure. As Linda and I both described, we came at this work from 2 different viewpoints or vantage points, her as a career returner and me as a career pivoter. And we really felt like, although those experiences were very different, there were a lot of commonalities that we saw in each other, and we knew that women would too. So when we launched Evolve Me, decided that our mission was not going to be just about women returners, which was like the focus of the program where we met, but both women who were employed and wanted to make a change or level up in their roles, and women who were returning to the workforce too. And we knew that, we both mentioned like that you can't, Google like, what do I do with the rest of my life, right? So I also, even though I had been working all those years, I hadn't really spent time, I hadn't given myself the space to think about what I love to do, like my skills, my strengths, how I could apply those to new roles. So I was really lacking clarity about my direction. And so we knew that in Evolve Me, our mission was to really give women clear steps on the path forward. And we created a method for career reinvention called the DARE method that has 4 pieces to it that really gives women the time and the space to go through a process of self-reflection and self-discovery, which is, as you said, like, many of us have kids or have caregiving roles and doing all the things. We don't really make time for ourselves to do this inner work. The first part of our DARE method starts with a lot of that inner work, assessing your talents, your strengths, what lights you up, what excites you now, your values, things like that. Really helping women to get past some of the blocks like imposter syndrome and lack of confidence. We work with some of the most talented women who don't have confidence in themselves that they can apply the skills to new opportunities, even if they had been out of the workforce. Their volunteer skills make a difference too. And then only then do we go on to help women kind of reconfigure their resume and their LinkedIn and brush up on interviewing skills and networking skills and all that good stuff. A lot of the inspiration behind Evolve Me, as you said, came from our own personal journeys and what we didn't have. We created the programming that we wished that we had when we were in transition. And frankly, when I was working, now we work with a lot of companies and organizations helping women get the professional development they need to succeed in their roles through workshops and other programming. I didn't have that when I was coming up in my career in the nonprofit sector. I think our mission has really been shaped by the ethos and the spirit of paying it forward from our experience.
I think that confidence piece is something we hear over and over, and I know even yourself, and I'm sure myself, can relate to just women struggle sometimes with having that confidence. Linda, you had mentioned when you were telling your background a little bit about the importance of having this strong support community and how that kind of became a cornerstone of Evolve Me. But how do you guys go about fostering that sense of belonging for these women?
Judy touched on the DARE method, so that's one of the cornerstones of Evolve Me. The other thing that we believe at our core is that we are all better together, and that trying to figure out your next step is so difficult to do alone, because all you do is go around and around in your head, and we can all talk ourselves out of anything, right? When we do this work that Judy mentioned around the DARE method, when we do that with a group of women who all have similar goals and similar mindsets, but come from diverse industries, it enables people to connect on the same level, but share their experiences and backgrounds so that they can all think outside the box and help each other come up with new possibilities that they may never have thought of before. So it's all about, when you're getting clarity, it's just very difficult to go around and around in your head. But when you come together with a bunch of women who are seeing you for the first time, who are really getting to know you, who are understanding your background, who are understanding your strengths, they can see things in you that you may never have seen before and help you think of new ways to use those strengths, expose you to industries that you may not even know have existed. This concept of being the mirror for others, when people outside your immediate circle get to know you and see you in a new light, they uncover strengths that you might not be aware of. And that is so confidence building. It also expands the possibilities of what you can do next. And it's also when people come to you, when we're helping each other, when people are coming to you for advice, when you're in a give and a get situation within a supportive community, when you're able to help other people, it's incredibly, incredibly confidence building. And those are the two places where we find women the most stuck when they're looking for the next step, is clarity on what they want to do next and the confidence to move forward. The rest of the DARE method is a lot of tools and things that can all be learned and developed, but you have to get through that inner work first before you can move forward. It also can be an incredible emotional support. Sometimes people are coming out of, if they're in a transition period, they're coming through something that maybe was difficult, a divorce, they're dealing with empty nesting, they're feeling like they're the only person in this situation. Just having, honestly, that emotional support from people and having a place to go to work through some of that. Definitely some of that happens too, and it's nice to have a place where everybody is going through the same thing and can empathize and understand with what you're going through.
I think it's definitely a big part, the emotional part, especially with women who are trying to return to the workforce or just change where they're at. Judy, could you just quickly share a story with us where there was a sense of community within Involve Me that acted as a catalyst for maybe one of the members' transformations?
We worked with a woman who had had a very successful career in the government sector in fintech. And she had spent a long time in the government and she wasn't sure that she could really do anything else, but she had an inkling that she might want to work in the corporate sector. And so it took what Linda was describing, her going through the first part of our process, that inner work, to kind of really distill whether this was the direction she wanted to go in. And then once she did, she was ready to get out into the world. She had that confidence back to tell her story. And she had a great pivot pitch, which is a piece of the programming that we do with women in transition to give them the confidence they need to go out and networking. So she was ready to network after several weeks in the reinvention. What's beautiful about the cohorts we run in the collective is that women really get to know each other well and cheer each other on and be that support system for each other. This was right in the middle of the pandemic when it feels like opportunities are scarce, but we were working with women who wanted to make a change, and she saw that there was an e-commerce conference, or actually she didn't see it first. Somebody else in the collective noted to her that this was a conference that was coming up that she might be interested in. She was like, "Oh, I never even thought about e-commerce as an area." And long story short, the other woman who found the conference for her to attend wound up going to the conference with her. I think it was a virtual conference at the time, but she still wanted a buddy for support. And she met some contacts there and realized that e-commerce was the direction to go for fintech, especially during the pandemic when all purchasing was going online. Is a growing field, and her skills were really needed at the time. And she made some connections at this conference, which led to her securing a job during the pandemic at a high profile retail company that it was focused on e-commerce. So, and she's still there, and she's really had a fabulous experience. And it's a great kind of success story of how it makes a difference to have someone else in your corner, someone who's invested in your success and who's looking out for you. And this was a peer of hers, and it's a fabulous success story. We love talking about her.
What an inspiration for everyone to take the leap. I could talk to you guys forever listening to these different inspirational stories, but maybe we'll finish up with Linda. What advice would you give to someone who's listening to this and contemplating their next career move?
Sure. Reinventing your career or thinking about your career path. It's an inside job. And a lot of times, especially women, whether we're working, we're taking care of everybody else, we're head down, we're just trying to make sure that everything gets done. We put ourselves at the bottom of our list, right? And it's very hard then to spend time for self-reflection. But you really need to make that time to think about what lights you up. What do you like to do? What are you good at? What did you love doing in college? Like, spend that inner time reflecting on what you would think, vision you would like to be doing next, right? And that takes a lot of time. So give yourself that space to do that. When you're thinking about what value you want to bring forward, be sure that you're taking a moment to think about your strengths. What do people come to you for? What do people tell you you're good at? What gives you flow? And focus on those areas of strength rather than worrying about fixing your weaknesses. Because again, we get very caught up in, I'm not good at this, so they won't want me. Double down on what you're good at. And I would say that right now in the job market in general, what we consider soft skills or transferable skills are so in demand. And those are skills that women in midlife have in abundance. Things like perspective, work ethic, agility, adaptability, judgment, or just being unflappable. All of those things are skills. They're important. So think about that when you're thinking about what you bring. And then the most important, I could go on because this is what Judy and I do. But I would say the next most important thing is don't go it alone. Whether you work with a coach, whether you have a group of colleagues that are all going through something like this, reconnect with your alumni group. Many schools have alumni groups that offer career support, but find a group of like-minded people that are in the same space to go forward with this, because it makes all the difference. And it is the difference between never launching and having the next best chapter of your life. If you do this with at least one other individual, but even better with a group of like-minded women.
I think that's a great place to end. We can't thank you enough, Judy and Linda, for giving all this great advice and starting Evolve Me. It's so needed. And I'm sure a number of our listeners will be reaching out to you after listening to this podcast. But thank you again for taking the time to talk with us.
Thank you so much for having us, Carol Ann.
Thanks so much, Carol Ann.
Thanks for tuning into today's episode of Women's Wealth, The Middle Way. Make sure to subscribe to us and leave a review on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, or your favorite podcast app. Join us for new episodes every other Wednesday. See you in 2 weeks.